everyone, and welcome to You, Me, and IP, the video podcast presented by the firm Greenspoon Marder. And this is where we break down IP issues of the day, including the people that shape them. I'm Bruce Siegal, Counsel with Greenspoon Marder, and today we're diving in to one of the most exciting frontiers in sports marketing. From locker rooms to licensing, endorsement, and sponsorship deals, the landscape in sports marketing has entered truly a new era. Dramatic changes in NCAA rules and governing laws have opened up a brave new world that includes the ability of student athletes for the first time to market their personal right of publicity rights, which are commonly referred to as NIL, or name, image, and likeness. These are a part of intellectual property. These are personal rights that individuals may protect and license for others to use. And to talk through the legal and business issues, mainly the business issues, we have an all-star panel to talk about the latest developments in the area. And so joining us are Karthik Shanadi and McGurrin, co-founders of apparel company Athletes Thread. Derek Eiler, executive vice president of college from e-commerce giant Fanatics, and Frank Arthofer, president of athlete licensing representative OneTeam Partners. By way of a really quick background, for over 100 years, the NCAA absolutely prohibited student athletes from making commercial use of their name, image, and likeness, or NIL rights. I know this because I lived through the era where I was senior vice president and general counsel of licensing agency, collegiate licensing company, IMG College, as Derek well knows. My job included collegiate brand protection and licensing. We were protecting university names, logos, and brands, while at the same time saying no to the use of student athlete NIL. That was not part of the equation. Unlike with professional leagues and other sports licensing programs, the NCAA said no. Therefore, the answer was no to anyone who wanted to use NIL as part of merchandise, as part of sponsorships, endorsements, and the like. Flash forward several years ago, a confluence of events led to the NCAA reversing this long-standing 100-year ban on NIL. Events included the NCAA just kept losing antitrust cases. States came in and began enacting laws beginning in 2019, basically saying no one is going to get between student athletes and their ability to license their NIL and the student athletes. So no one can prohibit, whether it's a university, conference, or anyone else, a student athlete from exercising his or her NIL rights. And then just generally a growing bad look, bad publicity, negative PR for the NCAA in enforcing this ban. So in 2021, the NCAA completely reversed course. They punted. They repealed these longstanding rules, essentially leaving it up to the individual states, the schools, the conferences to set the rules of the road, other than prohibiting pay for play, which meant that players could enter NIL deals with third parties for value, but schools could not themselves pay players directly. This period of time has often been referred to as the Wild West. It's safe to say that the dust is still settling. The West remains wild. And the most recent event now is that due to a settlement in an antitrust case called the House settlement, schools now may, in fact, and are beginning to have the ability to pay the student athletes directly. Our panel of folks are on the front lines of all of this, of sports, collegiate, and NIL innovation. They've got insights, they've got stories, maybe even a few hot takes to share. So buckle up, settle in, and let's jump right into it. We will kick off with a very quick lightning round, just so that you can get to know our our group a little bit better. I'd like to begin with Karthik and Luke. Tell us about what you do yourselves and your road to your current role in this world of sports and collegiate licensing and NIL.
I'm Karthik Shanadi, co-founder and CEO here at Athletes Thread, which is a licensed NIL merch marketplace. We support over 46,000 athletes across 380 schools. We currently sell into direct-to-consumer but also selling through retailers like Fanatics, bookstores on campus, and other regional sporting goods stores as well. Our mission is to support every athlete, not just the stars, and helping them monetize on their NIL. Luke and I started previously in the merchandise space, working in collegiate licensed merch, doing Greek and other student organization merch, and we started Athletes Thread in 2021.
And I'm Luke McGurrin, so I'm the other co-founder and CMO at Athletes Thread. So I oversee our growth and marketing teams. And I'll pass that over to Derek.
Great. So I'm Derek Eiler, Executive Vice President from Fanatics. I run our college division here. Most people know Fanatics as an e-commerce retailer, and that is a big part of our business. We've been the #1 retailer of college merchandise now for 5+ years running. But separate from that, we also are a manufacturer of product. And so we are Nike's exclusive partner in college, producing their top schools. We have an investment in the Champion brand, which is the longstanding major licensee in the college marketplace, #1 licensee for many, many years. We own a hard goods company called Windcraft that produces things like NIL pennants and other categories like that. We own Topps Trading Cards, which has a significant presence in the collegiate space around a brand they have called Bowman U. So Fanatics has a lot of tentacles in the NIL space, not only from a pro league standpoint, but obviously since the advent of NIL rights in college, we've been able to leverage all those brands into college experiences as well. So really happy to be here. Thank you. And Frank?
And hi, I'm Frank Arthofer, president of OneTeam Partners. I think most famously known for our role driving group licensing programs for the North American Players Associations. Unlike college, that is a decades-long history of NIL monetization. Fanatics is one of our largest partners. We also do operate in the sponsorship space, supporting athletes both passively and actively in driving value for themselves in an endorsement context. And then we own and operate certain businesses and invest in businesses in and around the NIL space. So great to be here. Appreciate the time.
Great intros. Thank you very much. Let's stick with Frank, if that's okay with you, Frank. If you could talk to us a little bit about how you and OneTeam are navigating the legal and commercial complexities of group licensing in this NIL era.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, group licensing kind of goes back to 70 years ago in Marvin Miller and MLBPA. So given they are one of our owners and founders at OneTeam, as you can imagine, we're constantly and regularly tracking, both the legal and regulatory complexities around NIL and right of publicity, given how sizable that business is in the pros and how germane it is, candidly, to the strength of the players' associations in the pros. I think, for a moment, just on NIL, there's a distinction between group licensing and kind of what we would call highlight deals, individual endorsement deals. And generally, group licensing, I would say, is more of a value add to the broader college NIL landscape, and more of the scrutiny tends to be around individual highlight deals and the validity and efficacy of those deals. Are they real or not? And NIL Go is really spending a lot of time focused upon that. That said, kind of double clicking into college group licensing, I do think there's some complexity. Maybe it's helpful to start with just a grounding on what the goal of group licensing is. It's really on two fronts. It's one, to, protect and also help athletes maximize the value of their passive IP. And then on the commercial side, it's two, to bring real efficiency to the marketplace such that we can allow best-in-class products for our partners to be made that excite and delight college sports fans. And I'd say, look, on the downside, in college sports, there's probably a bit of a vacuum for what I would describe as just a single entity, like you see in the pros, that protects athletes at the college level, that supports commercial partners at scale, that is effectively a one-stop shop, as we are for Fanatics and others in the pro side. Look, on the positive side, we also see areas where athletes are being taken into more serious consideration in college, even at times than they are in the pro side. I think a good example of that is any given Saturday. the new Netflix and box-to-box SEC follow doc that folks may be familiar with. And the pros, the rights to use players kind of passively in a show like that tends to be conveyed in a CBA, and players are typically not explicitly and directly compensated for that. For this program, we actually worked directly with Netflix and Box to Box, who I know from my time at Formula One and did the show Drive to Survive, to clear athletes to participate in the show and to actually get discrete and explicit compensation for that participation. So look, there's puts and takes in terms of college and the way it's evolving vis-a-vis the pros, but at a high level, I would say, we're living that dynamic every day.
That's great. That's great. And I'm going to want to circle back and talk about some of the specific, wins and opportunities for athletes via group licensing. But let's get to Derek to hear a little bit about how NIL has impacted the Fanatics business specifically in college.
Thank you. It's impacted our business materially in terms of the amount of time that we've spent navigating what I would call an inefficient marketplace. And, kudos to our friends at OneTeam who have done a lot of the heavy lifting for us as it relates to acquiring athlete rights. And so if you rewind to 2021, I remember vividly, I had a phone call. It was with an athletic director at a major Power 4 school now. And it was a call with their starting quarterback and the starting quarterback's agent and the AD saying, okay, NIL just passed. This is in July of that year. When will his jersey be available? And I had to literally go back to square one and describe to this athletic director that his jersey would be available next season, because there was no blank jerseys available because the school's licensing policy hadn't been updated yet to allow for player jerseys or customized jerseys even in general. So you couldn't order a Bruce Siegal or a Derek Eiler jersey at that point in time with this school's IP on it. And so you've really had to sort of rewire the entire ecosystem from start to finish to be prepared to deal with NIL, which meant having blank jerseys available and having player rights cleared and having the infrastructure to decorate jerseys on demand. And so a lot of the early work, I would say, in 2021 and 2022 really was foundational. It was clearing rights, building infrastructure, building customization infrastructure, because that same year, there were three quarterbacks that if we were betting on the future of NIL, there's three quarterbacks that year: Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma, Sam Howell at North Carolina, and JT Daniels, who was at Georgia that year. We would have put all our eggs in those three baskets: three blue chip programs, three great quarterbacks. One was injured by the fifth game. One never played a single down for the institution. And one of those guys transferred after and was backed up by Caleb Williams, ironically, who later then transferred from Oklahoma to USC. So what it highlighted for us was flexibility is the key in the NIL space. And so NIL today for us, we'll talk a little bit about the numbers, but NIL jerseys is our biggest category by far, and football is our biggest category on top of all that. But then you layer in the inefficiency that exists because there isn't a players association, and you have to rely on entities like OneTeam to create efficient markets. And at the end of the day, markets need efficiency to grow, and OneTeam delivers that. We think Fanatics delivers that, but it was really clunky the first few years. I think we've settled into a pretty good groove now where people realize that there are places and there are policies in place like group licensing agreements to go execute these programs on scale. And now the marketplace, both consumers as well as athletic directors, coaches, et cetera, realize how much this business is worth, what the potential areas are, and what it actually takes to get a jersey live. And I think last year we had 19,000 players that were live through our OneTeam partnership. We had 8,000 changes of some aspect of every player's GLA, either because of the transfer portal or players moving on. And so the key is really having a flexible supply chain that can react very, very quickly to this sort of modern consumer that now exists in this modern marketplace.
So while we're on that, how does the college business compare with the professional league business in the space?
Yeah, I mean, we often talk about college just being a cradle to grave market, and it literally is. If you are an Alabama fan, you were born an Alabama fan, there's no chance you're going to become an Auburn fan, and you die an Alabama fan. In collegiate licensing, you can buy a pacifier or you can buy a casket, and you can, that's literally cradle to grave. You have both ends of the spectrum. And so it's never really been a jersey market. And so people don't go to tailgating in the South or in the Midwest or in the on the West Coast. They typically wear a polo and some khakis and their favorite brands, shoes, or what the coach is wearing. It really hasn't been about what the player's wearing. For real perspective, the leagues are typically between 25 and let's call it 45% of their total book of business and is jersey sales. In college last year, that number was 8%. And within the 8%, some of those are generic jerseys like the number one. That is what some schools will permit. Some of those are personalized jerseys, so you can put your fan name on the back of a jersey. And about 2% of those jerseys were actually NIL jerseys. So that NIL piece is a big number. It's a completely incremental number, but we still have a long way to go before we actually grow to the level of the pro leagues. And again, I think the transfer portal is something that we're all wrestling with, because if a consumer is going to go spend $150 and buy their favorite player's jersey, they really want to wear that jersey for 3 years. They don't want to wear it for 1 year and then have to go replace it with another player. And so, the consumers are still sort of getting comfortable with the idea of the capital outlay required to go chase their favorite player in college.
Let's move to Karthik and Athletes Thread. And Karthik, give us a little bit of an insight into what inspired you and Luke to launch Athletes Thread, and talk a little bit about the business model of co-branding, that is, player rights co-branded with college and university logos, and how this works in obtaining college NIL rights.
Yeah, so Luke and I had actually been working on some technology in the space, and a lot of what Derek just mentioned, right? Personalization, customization at scale. We saw that, there's a real need for it in the collegiate license space. And so when NIL was coming about, we were immediately drawn to the idea because we looked at the sheer volume of athletes, right? You have 450,000 student athletes in the NCAA. So that was one data point we saw. The second was a lot of what Derek mentioned of just, seeing the athletes and having the transfer portals. While still new, we saw that there was a need for speed to market really, really quick. And so we leveraged that, and then we had built a lot of relationships over our time in the collegiate licensing industry. And so leveraging the tech, looking at the market opportunity, and then our existing relationships, we're able to dive right in and launch the business model. And one of the big hurdles we actually ran into early on was, how are we going to communicate with the athletes, get these folks on board at scale, and drive real commercial value? And it was a little bit of a chicken and the egg where, we knew the business model was there, but getting the athletes on board was difficult, and especially validating that, right, with new athletes and convincing them that, hey, we are the platform, especially when you talk about the Bryce Youngs of this world, right, that have more opportunities than just some merch deal that they're going to make some nominal amount on. And so leveraging group rights and OneTeam has been one of the primary drivers of our business model. And so how that works essentially is we license the IP through the school and pay a royalty rate there. And then we also leverage the athlete IP through OneTeam, and we pay a royalty rate to the folks over at OneTeam that then gets distributed to the athletes. So by leveraging OneTeam, we're able to bring real volume and scale to the platform. And then beyond that, where we've extended our platform is, not every athlete wants to go out and actively sell their merch, and they want it to be a passive use deal. However, there's a number of athletes that don't have the same opportunities of the Bryce Youngs or the Arch Mannings and DJ Lagways. So in addition to what we've deployed with OneTeam and the group licensing side of things, we also have a program where athletes can sign up on our platform, actively promote their products, and earn additional commission for their kind of just their push on the referral side of things of traffic to our site. So we've been able to leverage the group licensing side, but also build a program that allows for athletes to get more involved and drive more direct traffic to our site as well.
Sometimes when change occurs, there tends to be some pushback and resistance. And I know that in an earlier time, there was even a real question about whether and to what extent co-branding could take place. In other words, can there even be a scenario where college marks are used in connection with NIL? Now they obviously they can be, but has the reception by collegiate institutions been open to this kind of a co-branding opportunity?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, there's a lot more reluctancy of integrating the athlete's IP more rigorously with the co-brands. But I've seen over the last 4 years, and going on year 5 now, right, the posturing has changed. And I think it's been a balancing act of how do you allow for student athletes to pursue their creative freedom while also balancing the IP. And that's kind of where we come in and provide a real solution, because we've got 30 full-time designers that have been in the collegiate license space for over 13 years now, right? And so leveraging their talent and know-hows of how IP works and then pairing them up with the athletes, I think has been a real benefit of what we've been able to bring to the marketplace. And so it's definitely been a challenge, but we have seen the posturing change quite a bit over the last 4 years. And I think there's successes that we've seen that we've been able to draw on and convince the licensing folks in the industry of, hey, there is some real value in letting the athletes be creative and driving a lot of the marketing on their side. It's essentially free marketing for the schools in a lot of ways, right? If the athlete's going out and actively promoting it, and we're paying out the referral fee on our side, right? So that's been a big benefit we have seen, is just balancing that creativity while also integrating that school IP and doing things compliantly has been a real success for us.
Great. Sounds like a true win-win. And that segues into a question that I would like to ask of Luke. Luke, what are some of the most innovative NIL campaigns that you and Athletes Thread have seen or helped to create?
Yeah, absolutely. So Derek mentioned the University of Alabama and the fan base being, a cradle to the grave fan base. And I think that is where the most innovative NIL campaign that we've worked on to date actually came from. So in 2023, we worked with Alabama's quarterback and cornerback. So it was Jalen Milroe and Terrion Arnold. And what they did was very innovative, is they came up with a saying, "Let all naysayers know." And then the acronym was LANK. And so what we were able to do is work with our design team and the University of Alabama to co-brand it. And we actually used the Alabama script A in the acronym LANK. And so that was really innovative because it allowed the fan base, who's at the end of the day, they're always going to be a fan of the school and the team. And so it allowed just the fan base to really buy into this. It almost became a movement with the University of Alabama. And what that did was that expanded the sales opportunity, because it wasn't just single to one athlete. So it wasn't just a personal brand. It was actually a brand for the team driven by NIL. And so it was our largest brand to date. I think in 2 months, it was just under a 7-figure brand. I think it crossed that over, the span of a few years. And that was really eye-opening for us. And it really allowed us to touch on all components of NIL, where we had a large direct-to-consumer push on our website. So a lot of fans found it, just came onto the website. We were able to get it into a lot of different retailers, including the bookstore. We even did a pop-up when Alabama played Michigan at the Rose Bowl. And so it was a really cool brand to see. We had over 200 million impressions across social and TV with it. So it was just really cool. And I think going back to it, it was a great opportunity where we were able to see the school get involved, because it was co-branded. And then as well, the athletes, they made it bigger than themselves, and they actually expanded the brand to the whole team. And I think that was really unique and powerful. And, we've seen that more and more play out in NIL. And I think we're going to only see it more because it really allows that whole fan base to get behind it.
And I love that example, Luke.
Success story.
That example, Luke, really is like the entire intent of NIL was designed to be A, authentic, and B, commercial, but it's also wildly educational. I mean, here you have a couple of student athletes that can go invest in building something that's bigger than themselves, that is team driven still at that point in time, that can drive real revenue, they can pull fans into the whole thing. And so that's a perfect example of, I think, if you were to look up in Wikipedia, like what is NIL supposed to be? That's the example of what NIL is actually supposed to be. And it took your ingenuity and your company's ingenuity to be small and nimble. It's hard for us to move and build something that grassroots, but I think that's the marriage between, like, what we do is really, really big, and we had plenty of Jalen Milroe jerseys for sale that year. But what you guys did was really hustle kind of community up and team up, and that's that worked incredibly well that year.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I
That's
think
great.
to your point, you really need both sides to fill in the market. You have to attack it at the large distribution levels, and then you also have to attack it at the small and nimble levels so that these athletes, because, these athletes in college have 4 to 5 years maybe to capitalize on their NIL. So you really have to make sure that, they have opportunity across all levels. So yeah, I think you're spot on with that.
Frank, you're welcome to respond to that. And also, I wanted to kind of get into following up on, from your perspective, what is your overall unique selling point in this ecosystem? And talk about some of the big wins and opportunities for athletes in the world of group licensing to date and going forward.
I mean, I spoke to this previously. I think the way we kind of think about it is there's sort of two sides to this marketplace that we serve, right? We serve athletes on one side, and then on the other side, we serve commercial partners. Obviously in the pro space, that is also true, but the group licensing rights are conveyed exclusively to the players' associations, and we represent the PAs. So it's a little more of a kind of seller-buyer dynamic, whereas here it's a little more of a broker type of dynamic. And so I think we have to think about our USP to both of those constituencies. On the commercial partner side, as Derek said, right, the marketplace needs efficiency and flexibility. The Tennessee and UCLA quarterbacks swap places. You need to be ready the next day to make product available for those players on Fanatics, and we offer that solution to Fanatics and vice versa, right? And so on one hand, I would say it's very much commercial efficiency and flexibility for our partners. That is probably our biggest USP. We love our team. We think we're operationally great. We obviously know and do more group licensing deals than anybody in the world. So we think we're pretty efficient on that side too. But I think it's that scale, efficiency, and flexibility on the commercial partner side. On the athlete side, look, I think the first and simplest thing is our mission is to support athletes. If athletes aren't happy, we're not doing our job. And I think that's why we approach this business as non-exclusive rights with all of our athletes, because we don't want to limit our opportunities more broadly. And two, I think we also feel that our best-in-class licensing partnerships with Fanatics, with EA, now with Athletes Thread and many others, just allows us to go to athletes with legitimate, high-profile opportunities for their NIL that are rinse and repeat, that they're going to benefit from both from a marketing and publicity perspective and from a royalty perspective, the day that they sign up with us. And we think that's a pretty unique proposition given the somewhat crowded space of NIL at the moment.
Great. Karthik, we've talked about, having a great offense and creating great and unique and creative opportunities. What about the flip side? What about defense? My experience in the world that I come from has involved in large part enforcing infringements of intellectual property rights. And you would think that in a world where these kinds of programs and, player NIL and university rights are very popular and sought after intellectual property rights. Are you starting to come across any instances where we have to go after the bad guys that are selling infringing or counterfeit product?
I'll take this one, Bruce. So we are seeing, no, you're good. You're good. So we are seeing, infringement with IP. And I would say over the last 2 to 3 years, what we've seen is just an acceleration in the technology that people who are infringing on the IP use. So what I mean by that is what will happen is we'll make a new design for an athlete, we'll publish it to our website, and there is, people use technology to scrape our website, take that design, auto publish it across multiple print on demand sites, and they'll even, send out a fake marketing tweet that, we've seen it where it's Fanatics, but it's got an extra N in the name. And so it looks authentic, but then it's actually not. And they do it so quickly, it causes confusion even to the athletes, because they might have been working with us and say, hey, I love the design, they approve it. And then sure enough, they see it on Twitter and think it's from us, but it's actually an infringer. So I think, you've done a lot of work with IP, especially when it comes to marketplaces. And the way kind of the law works right now is marketplaces have a process in place to take something down once they've been notified that, hey, there's, IP that's infringing on your website and they'll have a process to take it down. What I think they don't have the best process for is to stop it from going up in the first place. And so I think right now we see it where it's really a technological threat of how fast these companies can take the IP and publish it. And so we're going to need to combat that with a technical solution. And I know there's tools out there like Counterfind that, universities with CLC that we partner with, they have access to this. So as soon as we see it, we'll let them know, they'll notify it, and they'll be able to take these down. But I still think the tools have a bit to go in just the process in general so that we can catch up to how fast it actually happens on the front where it is taken in the first place.
And
Indeed.
Bruce, if imitation is a serious form of flattery, then counterfeiting in the secondary market isn't the worst problem from a demand generation standpoint. So, I mean, the reality is counterfeit college NIL jerseys have been around for a decade. With sublimation overseas and with direct-to-consumer shipping, this market has been being built by counterfeiters until the NCAA law changed. And so part of a good defense in this case is actually having a good offense and having solutions like Fanatics and Athletes Thread and OneTeam actually putting solutions out so consumers can get authentic product versus having to go to some Chinese website and and buy a bootleg product.
As a quick aside to build on that point, the reason, and Bruce, you'll know this given the format for this podcast, the reason Disney built Hulu in part is because they wanted to get aggressive on offense, not defense, around IP protection and giving consumers and fans a place to watch legitimately the shows that they wanted. And I think the same is true here, and Derek and Luke just hit on that.
Mm-hmm. Great points. I mean, now that we've got something to protect, that it becomes increasingly important to, enforce the rights that are being acquired and that are being licensed and that are out there. That's an awesome point. I have one final question for any or each of you, if you would like to address, just sort of like, and this is always the question that comes near the end, kind of what do you see? And when you look at the college NIL marketplace, which is, still, fairly new to the extent that we've got NIL involved in it. But, where do you see things going? Where do you see, kind of the opportunities and the activity taking place over the next several years? And I know that this is a dynamic marketplace and things are changing all the time, but any insight there would be much appreciated.
From our perspective at Fanatics, we're not backing off the space at all. While it is maturing in terms of its back end stability, I think the market demand opportunity will continue to grow. I think it will require flexibility and nimbleness and a really creative supply chain because of all the factors that we've talked about here today. So we think it will continue to rise despite people transferring rosters, despite a bunch of cost of attendance, other things. The reality is demand for college is at an all-time high, and there continues to be a tremendous fan interest. And where there's interest, there's opportunity. And so, we will continue to provide fans and, more importantly, our partner schools and then our athlete partners through OneTeam the chance to celebrate their fandom with NIL merchandise. And so, part of the good news is we're also educating student athletes younger because of the Fanatics college programs, and a lot of the best athletes end up becoming pro athletes. And so hopefully downstream, just connecting the entire college to pro ecosystem, maybe even high school at some point in time, just makes this all a smoother process for all parties.
Great.
Yeah, and on Athletes Thread end, I think we feel the same way. We're doubling down in the space, but I think from our perspective, we don't think this is definitely part of the market is definitely a top athlete and star driven marketplace, but we also see the other 98% of the marketplace where it's a lot of friends and family that want to support these athletes. And so I think both are going to need to coexist to kind of reach the maturation level that we've talked about on this podcast, right? Is just getting into those percentages that mimic the pro league. I think it's going to require an equal concerted effort in attacking both of those market segments, and not just on our direct-to-consumer site, right? It's expanding our product catalog on Fanatics, getting in more with retailers such as Dick's Sporting Goods or other bookstores around the country. But I do think both markets are equally important, and it's going to be both of those that drive the change that's needed from our perspective. So we are doubling down on both as we see it, and it's going to be leveraging the retailers, but also helping grow the affiliate program of those athletes that want to go actively promote Athletes Thread and their brand on our website as well.
I won't really say much new. I'll build on what both, Derek and Karthik said. I think, looking backwards, a couple wins that we love to point to. This partnership amongst the three of us, as well as On It Trading Cards, these are businesses and partners that are not just making, NIL product for the biggest college football programs. We're working in men's hockey. We're working in women's volleyball. We're working in gymnastics. We're really scaling these products in a bigger way to all athletes in the college ecosystem. And again, back to our mission to serve athletes everywhere in every sport. That's really germane and important to us. Looking forward, I think Derek hit the stats, 2% on Fanatics. We kind of estimate 2 to 5% of the overall market is jersey market rather is NIL embellished product in the NFL and NBA and WNBA. That's 100%. And so, there's obviously a gap there. There's some structural challenges and change in college. The transfer portal is not the least of the challenges on that front, but certainly there is headroom there. As we bring a more efficient solution to bear as partners like Fanatics and Karthik invest in a more efficient supply chain. And, we look forward to realizing that opportunity together.
Great point. And great way to kind of think about this in terms of collegiate athletics generally. Again, certainly there are great opportunities for elite athletes. However, NIL is available to any collegiate athlete that is interested in participating. And it's super great that you all are interested in and focused on providing opportunities to non-revenue sports, to others that are athletes, certainly in their own right, but not necessarily the star quarterback or point guard. And for that, we applaud you. And I really do appreciate you all making and providing this generous availability of your time and expertise and vision in this fascinating space and talking a little bit about your glimpse on the future of collegiate licensing and NIL. And for the audience, whether you're an attorney interested in the space, a student athlete, a brand builder, or a fan of intellectual property, we hope that you picked up something new and maybe even a little inspiration. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can catch the video version on our website and through our YouTube channel. Until next time, keep it legal, keep it creative, and keep it fun. And if you have a burning intellectual property question, drop us a line and we might even feature it on our next video podcast. Thanks again. Have a great day.